Malo tau lava mai, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific, ko au koroi Hawkins. Coming up,
they were supposed to lead a high-level investigation in order to find a sustainable conflict resolution.
Paris and Noumea at loggerheads over Pacific leaders visiting New Caledonia. Researchers in Aotearoa team up with Pacific communities to tackle rheumatic fever and gout. And in rugby union,
every test match we play is an important test match, but we've also got one eye on the future.
The expanded Pacific Nations Cup series gets underway in Fiji and Canada this weekend. Plans for a high-level Pacific Islands Forum mission to New Caledonia have become messy, with the French High Commission in Noumea and the local government at loggerheads over who should be organising the visit and welcoming the delegation. New Caledonia's president now wants the mission to be deferred, while Paris is still prepared to receive the prime ministers of the Cook Islands, Tonga and Fiji. Lydia Lewis has the latest.
It was New Caledonia's President Louis Marple who originally requested the forum mission, but he's now withdrawn his blessing, accusing Paris of trying to hijack it to serve its own purposes and of humiliating Pacific leaders in the process. But a source close to the French president says they're pushing on with plans and have set up a committee for the visit. They've invited President Marple to join them in welcoming the leaders, but he's declined. The Pacific Islands Forum is yet to issue a statement on whether or not the trip is still on, but RNZ Pacific understands the mission has been postponed.
Meanwhile, the president of New Caledonia's Congress, Rohwamitan, has accused Paris of stalling the territory's decolonisation process. It's now been more than 3 months since violence erupted in Noumea over proposed constitutional changes that would have enabled more non-Indigenous New Caledonians to vote in local body elections. Mr. Wamitan says the violence must end so a path forward can be charted. He spoke with Lydia Lewis, who started off by asking what the latest is on the Pacific mission.
The arrivals was very important because they were supposed to lead a high-level investigation in order to find a sustainable conflict resolution for the crisis in Kanaki, New Caledonia. Unfortunately, this mission was postponed by the Pacific Island Forum because there's no consensus on the organization and the running of this event. The mission has to take place before the Pacific Island Summit on 26 August in Tonga. However, this will enable us to better prepare for this reception.
What are your hopes for the future of Kanaki, New Caledonia?
Firstly, we must be able to ease tensions to allow a return to calm. Then we will be able to establish communication again, to consider what comes next. That is to say, rebuilding our country, New Caledonia. Every crisis contains lessons. They must be taken into account for the future. The movement on the ground said 2 simple things. First, the Kanak people will never give up their independence. Inequalities are more and more glaring, despite all the agreements made and the public policies that have been decided. Based on this, we must rebuild, but certainly with a new vision of things. A lasting peace must be guaranteed, and for this we must understand once and for all that New Caledonia is not France. We are in a process of decolonization that the French state must bring to its conclusion. There is no other alternative. As a result, the French state must resume an impartial stance in the management of the decolonization process in New Caledonia.
And Paris maintains that the third referendum, which was quite controversial, still stands. What is your response to that?
We have not stopped saying it. The referendum of December 12, 2021 is illegitimate. The French state wanted to persist in recognizing it, even though the populations concerned did not participate. that is the Kanak people. And this is largely what led us to this situation of gout. I repeat, the method used by the French state has until today been disastrous. The French state must absolutely change its soft war and respect past commitments and, in particular, lead our country to its full emancipation and sovereignty. This referendum was boycotted by the Kanak people. We were mourning following the COVID epidemic because of the restrictions on gatherings due to the COVID. We were unable to carry out the traditional mourning ceremonies. So we asked for a delay to allow time for family to mourn and for Kanak mourning customs to be respected. Party maintained the third referendum stance, but 56% of voters abstained from voting. I think if more than half the electorate abstains, this means that the result of the referendum does not express the will of the majority of the population of New Caledonia. We are currently reaping the reward of refusing to postpone this referendum. Also, we warned that holding the referendum without the Kanak people would lead us straight to the wall.
New Caledonia became a Pacific Islands Forum member in 2016 with the understanding that decolonisation would come. Has Paris stalled at all the sovereignty efforts?
Yes, stay stalled. Is it due to the President Macron's government partiality on the decolonization process? By being partial, they make the democratic process unfair for indigenous people of New Caledonia, Kanaki. They maintained the third referendum while we were undisposed because of the loss of life and mourning. By maintaining this referendum, President Macron seized the opportunity to maintain the referendum, knowing that the independentists would not participate and therefore knowing that the referendum would be in his favor.
And the French ambassador to the Pacific clearly stated to RNZ Pacific that France will decide who enters New Caledonia, even though local government shares foreign policy responsibility. What message does Ms. Rojalakan's words send?
I think that the ambassador used inappropriate words. She certainly ignored the evolutionary process that led to our current political organization with enhanced autonomy. Her comments were not appreciated because it amounts to telling local political leaders that it is France which is in charge. But in practice, this is not entirely true. I invite the ambassador to be careful about the language that she used, especially in the current context. It is a classic colonial stance. In theory, the law provides for this competence to be shared, but in practice, the interests of France take precedence over the interests of New Caledonia. Regarding to the Pacific Island Forum mission, New Caledonia is a member of this organization, and the government of New Caledonia took the initiative to invite PIF mission, but the French government want to control the subject and the object of this mission to instrumentalize their constituents into condemning the insurrection to discredit the demand for independence. I find it unhealthy for a senior civil servant to welcome the Troika without the president of government. It will be demeaning to the function of our guests.
What is your reaction to people still being held on mainland France?
Yes, this recalls a time not so long ago when the French state deported prisoners, the Kanak prisoner, the chief prisoner, to French Polynesia, to Djibouti, to France, to Vietnam, etc. It also recalls the dark hours of colonization when the Kanak people were fed into reserves and had no rights. Such a decision had not been taken since the Noumea tragedy in 1988. It is a decision which respects neither human rights nor the rights of defense, characteristic of neocolonial justice. This incomprehensible and disproportionate decision reinforced violence following this abuse arrest. The release of our political prisoners is a prerequisite for future discussions which must be initiated between the parties.
What does your nephew's death mean to you and the wider pro-independence movement?
For me, it is unacceptable that the police should kill Kanak youth when they can do otherwise. My nephew was driven by a desire for independence, and the circumstances of his death are still unclear to this day.
What's your reaction to Sonia Bacchus's call for segregation?
Our country aims to become a nation in the future. It is one. Our country is one. New Caledonia is one. Kanaki is one. Even if its current organization is made up of 3 provinces, these institutions are for the political desire for rebalancing. There was never any question of these provinces favoring any partition of the country. Mrs. Bacchus fears losing the next provincial elections, which is surely what pushed her to say such nonsense. The proposal will never succeed. In addition, the Noumea Accord already provided for mechanisms to prevent this kind of segregationist intent, such as the overall counting of votes rather than by province. Finally, we will do everything in our power to avoid partition of our country.
And there's just been an election in France. What do the results and any potential and a potentially new Prime Minister mean for the future of New Caledonia?
It is a decision of the President Macron, of the President of the French Republic, to have dissolved the National Assembly within the framework of its prerogatives, political prerogatives. The new composition of this assembly demonstrates, on the one hand, that the French have sanctioned the policy of the Macron government, and on the other hand, voted mainly for the left wing. Even if no political force can guarantee itself from having an absolute majority, it is necessary to underline the record participation of voters in this legislative election. In New Caledonia, the voters, despite the social and political context, allowed the election of a pro-independent member of French Parliament, which has not happened since 1986. This is a very good thing for the future, and I hope that the nomination of the next national government will be in accordance with the results of the ballot boxes. We will have to consider the future in the coming months with new interlocutors from the French state, the new French government in the weeks coming. They will have to rise to the challenges and our local realities and no longer reproduce the same political error are their predecessors. The current situation is the entire responsibility of the French head of state and his former minister. These elections are plunging France into an absolute fog. We are hoping for the appointment of a prime minister from the left-wing majority. The appointment of a right-wing prime minister will lead us to the wall again if that happens.
Two young Pacific researchers have teamed up with the South Auckland community to take on rheumatic fever and gout, which are two of the major health issues facing Māori and Pacific people. Postdoctoral research fellows Dr. Siobhan Tuakoi and Dr. Samuela Ofanoa launched their respective research projects this year, funded by the Health Research Council. They named rheumatic fever and gout as largely affecting Māori and Pacific people in their communities. However, Dr. Nigel Wilson of Starship Children's Hospital has worked on the front line as a pediatric cardiologist for more than 30 years, and he says the rates are much higher in the Pacific region. Dr. Wilson spoke with RNZ Pacific reporter Grace Fiavai.
Rheumatic fever is a childhood infection which affects your ankles and your elbows and your knees, and it's very painful, but that all goes away. But what persists is a persistent inflammation of the heart, leads to heart valve scarring and long-term damage to the heart. So it's a very, it's just a difficult message that why could a sore throat affect your heart? And that is the message to get across.
What are the rates like in Aotearoa when it comes to ethnic disparities?
Unfortunately, rheumatic fever remains an unsolved problem in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Currently, the rates are twice as high for Pacific children as Maori, but we really only have one or so European child getting new rheumatic fever currently. So there's a huge ethnic disparities. We do know that Pakeha used to get rheumatic fever, and we have a registry of long-term rheumatic heart disease. So rheumatic fever is determined by socioeconomic determinants of health. So those with more crowded housing are more at risk of getting rheumatic fever. Pacific particularly have multi-generational living, culturally appropriate, and the houses are not big enough, and there aren't enough houses. So the overall fleets of houses, the stock there is too small for the country. A slow solution. In terms of the community level, it's important that children get this. If they have a sore throat, that they get to see a nurse or a doctor to do a throat swab and to see if it is the strep. And if it is strep, then to have 10 days of oral antibiotics. And there's a lot of barriers in the health services to actually getting that done, because you've got to take time off work, take the child to get a test, wait for the result, and start the antibiotics. And there's a lot of work going on at the community level to make this to make it more easy for Māori and Pacific to get their sore throats treated, assessed, and treated correctly.
Is there a significance in rates compared to New Zealand then in the Pacific? And what are the causes of it? Did it used to be like this, just, Pacific Islanders and Māori?
In my department, in Starship Children's Heart Department at the hospital, we go out to all the South Pacific Islands and do clinics with the paediatricians, and we see rates of established bad rheumatic heart disease amongst children, and they're high, if not higher, than Pacific children in Aotearoa. So it's a huge problem in the Pacific, and it's a huge problem internationally, rheumatic fever still.
So what should we keep doing to get better outcomes?
The more we keep it in the forefront, the more we've got a chance of preventing and getting better outcomes overall for those that are affected.
The expanded Pacific Nations Cup Series will get underway in Fiji and Canada this weekend. The new 6-team competition includes Fiji, Samoa, Tonga, Canada, the USA and Japan, and will see them competing in 2 pools for the main title of the next 6 weeks. But the focus will be in Suva, where the Flying Fijians will host Manu Samoa for the 56th test between the two countries over the past 100 years on Friday. RNZ Pacific senior sports journalist Elias Satora has the story.
Fiji, Samoa and Tonga will be battling each other in the Pacific pool of the 2024 series, beginning at the National Stadium in Laudala. While the Samoans are flying into Fiji, Flying Fijians head coach Mick Burns says they aim to build their young players while also going for a win.
Every test match we play is an important test match, And that's what our focus is. Every test match we need to win. It's an important test match. But we've also got one eye on the future and how we build towards that squad. So there's a couple of things at play. But, I know our fans understand what we're doing, and they've been loyal fans and they support us. So we're really looking forward to being able to showcase our talent for them, especially this Friday night.
Byrne and his squad started their preparations by attending a church service in Suva on Sunday. Te Noumea Vanua, one of a few Europe-based players in the squad, says that it is critical for them to seek spiritual guidance before taking on the challenge ahead of them.
For me personally, I feel like our spiritual life is the most important. As we know, in Fiji, there's only 3 pillars that defines a Fijian. His relationship to the Vanua, to his family, the Matububale, and to his faith. And for us as a team, it's a good start to the campaign. There's one aspect that we want to focus on is our spirituality, taking it forward not only on the field but also off the field, which is a great challenge for us.
Former Flying Fijians captain Moses Rauluni, now Fijiana women's head coach, has wished the team well as they prepare to tackle Manu Samoa.
Just a shout out to our Fiji Water Flying Fijians. We wish you all the best in your big match next Friday against Samoa at the HFC Stadium. And the whole of the Fijiana team behind me is supporting you. And we know you will do your best. And to Mick and the team, all the best. Unaka.
Meanwhile, both Lakapi Samoa and the Tonga Rugby Union are celebrating 100 years of Test rugby this year. The two teams played Fiji in their first ever Test matches in 1924. Lakapi Samoa have a week-long celebration planned for Apia from the 25th of August, culminating with the Manu Samoa Kaletahi clash at Apia Park on the 30th of August. Tonga Rugby have their own celebrations planned for the week after, that also including the rugby test between the Kaletahi and the Flying Fijians at Te Whaiva Stadium on the 6th of September.
That's Pacific Waves for today. For all episodes, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, Mo Nofua.